with agencies specifically, the key thing that we have are the power of switching costs, meaning that the more services we can layer on, the more of a pain it is for them to cancel. So if we do a pretty good job on all of them.
See, the icky turns into sticky.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, where we talk about life, business, and today we are getting into the nitty-gritty of the most effective marketing. Yes, we are going deep. I am talking about real-time, amazing strategies, conversations, things to be aware of on the internet that is terrible advice, and then obviously the best advice in the game from a near dear friend, peer, and absolutely brilliant mind. Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, Eric Siu.
Thanks for having me, Jasmine.
I'm so happy you're here. Okay, likewise. So we're going to start with the T, right? Personalize. Eric and I, we go back a few years. Mm-hmm. You come into the podcasting studio, and parking here in Hollywood is really tough. And you're like, I don't have, I left my credit cards at home, and I gave you my credit card, and I was like, okay, put a couple bucks in the meter. And you only put $1, but mm-hmm. I was bummed because I wanted you to put $2 because you bought your agency for $2. Oh. So I was hoping, I was just like, did I just give Eric $2 for the hope that I'm going to buy your agency? Yeah. Okay, we're going to get to that story in a little bit. It's like a little bit mystique. How is this guy doing millions and millions of dollars based on $2 to begin with? We will go back there, but let's start with like a real conversation. Let's land and hit the ground running. We're going to get to origin story and all that good stuff, but let's start with value. We walk in, we land immediately, and you're like, I had a conversation with somebody, and he said, these people are stupid because this information is just terrible on the internet when it comes to marketing. Let's start right now. Value add. Yeah. What is the state of marketing? What is not working? How do we get better? What are the trends that you see? Let's just call them out. Let's just go.
I think there's just some irresponsible things I've learned over the years, and I've learned my mistakes. And so my podcast co-host Neil calls me yesterday, and then he just calls me complaining. He's like, I just saw so-and-so's thing, and it's so stupid, blah, blah, blah. And we just started talking about it, and it's like, yeah, like a lot of the stuff that's being pushed by especially business influencers is not necessarily true. And we're just, we're talking about it a little more. We're like, the more influential you are actually when it comes to building your brand, it's less likely you have a really big company.
Whoa.
And so okay, here, I'll give you an example. One was maybe 4 years ago or so, everyone on Twitter was talking about hiring a CEO. You got to hire a CEO. You got to get out of the business. You got to work on the business. And then I just finished a book right now with J. Paul Getty. So Getty Museum, Getty Villa. Yeah. He was the richest man in the world for a period of time. And he has a chapter in there where he talks about the working businessman. And he basically says, like, it's such a joke that people think that they can just hire a CEO and run. Like, nobody's going to run the business as well as you are. They don't have the vision that you have. They don't care as much as you do. And I've just learned that over the years. Anytime I've tried to step away from the business completely, everything falls apart. It's happened multiple times. So I've seen the pattern multiple times. And yet, at the same time, the people that I see on Twitter talking about how they have a holding company or they're hiring CEOs, blah, blah, blah. And I look at it, you just look a little deeper. If you have a little experience and you take a look at it, the businesses aren't that big. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be that big, but I think it's irresponsible to talk about this stuff and act like your business is really big when it's not, because you're actually not teaching what you actually know.
Oh, okay. So let's go here. So, I do some creeping. Every time a guest comes in, I really want to know like where they are, like head, heart, soul. And you had a conversation with Alex Hormozy around this idea that it seems really popular for people to have a holding company. Mm-hmm. And when you'd said that when somebody has a big personal brand or they're making a lot of content, it's probably not reflective of the size of their business. Mm-hmm. Is he an exception to the rule?
I think he's an exception. So him and Layla, they're both amazing operators. And he's even said that recently where they focus on operating and growing the business. And he's even admitted that when it comes to maybe taking on leverage or things like that, that's not really his forte yet, right? But I think they've done amazing with taking over these or taking. I think most of them are majority stakes, but also some minority stakes. Mm-hmm. And they've actually grown the business, and it's through sheer willpower, like actually being in there operating alongside the founders. Okay.
And so then when you look at these like business influencers, get to me about the psychology of saying, well, you don't have a big holding company. What is the difference? Like the veracity or like street cred for them to be able to talk about it?
So I think with the holding company thing, and I've learned this, there's a whole bunch of threads. Like I'm reading like a couple of different books right now, and it just talks about the more you tend to focus on one thing, the bigger it tends to get. And you don't necessarily need to place too much importance into it. Right. But and I was talking to my friend last week about this. We're just talking in 2020, I tried to force a lot of different things, right? So in addition to doing 2 acquisitions, there's this software company over here. Oh, there's also this education thing over here. Oh, in the meantime, we're launching a book too. It's just too many things. And it's chaos. And he said the same thing. He's like, man, in 2020, yeah, we tried to force all these different product lines, and we placed too much importance on these things. And the more importance you place on these things, the more it gets away from you. Same thing with relationships too. The more you try to chase, like, the beautiful women, they run away from you because you place too much importance on it. And it applies to business. It applies to every single thing. And so when you do that, you create chaos, and ultimately you don't get what you want because, well, you created this inorganic desire, and everything falls apart.
And so what about hiring? Well, isn't it solved by having a highly effective operator in, like, let's just say you were doing the 2 acquisitions, the tech company. Is it because the strength of the operator, or is it simply because the dilution of focus?
Yeah. So I think it's both. So first, I'll go with my thing with 2020 was we hired an operator that actually ended up stealing from us. So that's a little different for us.
Okay.
But also at the same time, what did they say? That the road to hell is paved with good intentions. My whole intention with everything is like, I've always grown up being like, if I can figure these things out, anybody else can figure it out, right? You can't do that. You can't expect someone else to figure it out on your dime. You have to be involved, and nobody else is going to have the vision that you have. And
I agree.
Same thing with Neil and I were talking about this on a podcast we did Monday, and it's like global company, nobody could figure out what was going on with sales. His co-founder steps in, and he's been in it, and it problem solved, right? The other thing is you can't move as quickly as you want. And what he was saying was like they're sitting in like a executive meeting, and they couldn't figure out if they wanted to spend $10,000 to $20,000 on one thing. And for their size, $10,000 to $20,000 is nothing.
Right.
And then his co-founder Mike steps in, dude, let's just do it. Let's see what happens, right? So it's just like the more you get away from the business, the more bureaucracy is created, and the slower you go.
And so, okay, so I should probably be very clear that I was not expecting for us to talk about holding companies. I think that, Eric, here's the thing. I hate saying this, and it's going to make you cringe, and that's okay because we're friends, and you could be like, Jasmine, I just got the ick, and that's totally fine. Like, I'm cool with it. I didn't even know what a holding company was until January 2023.
I don't feel any ick at all.
Well, wait, it's coming.
Okay.
And actually, it doesn't even bother me. Like when people have ick, like people had ick when I said I wanted to become a photographer and I didn't own a camera.
Yeah.
Then people had ick when I said, okay, I'm going to start creating content in a scalable way. And they're like, oh, okay, like influencer. And then they had ick when I said, I'm going to create a membership. But then once we got into the membership, I realized I actually needed to build SaaS, and I had no idea how to build SaaS. And people were like, ick. And so to me, I was just like, icky leads to sticky. I don't know where that came from, but I'm supposed to be sticky. I'm gonna, yes. So icky works out for me. And I think that by sheer force of will, what I saw in my mind before I knew what a holding company was, and I don't even know how woo you are, but like literally I saw this idea, this vision of like almost like an octopus. And I was just like, I feel like I'm being pulled to something that I don't even know what this means about my business, but all I inherently knew that Alex, I was outgrowing my capacity in the business. We put a president in, she's killing it. And I'm like, okay, what's next for me? And so then in 2023, I found out what this word holding company is. So then I go down this freaking rabbit hole and I'm like, holy God, a holding company is a freaking octopus. And I was just like, all right, small bites, small bites. I think this is the thing that I am supposed to build. I have no intentions to give advice about it. I have no intentions other than to document my journey. So I think that this is super kismet because you can just come out and say like, just hold the crap, Jasmine. Just do the damn work. And based on things that you have done in the past. So somebody's listening and they're nowhere near the size of your business. And we're going to get into the business of your business. And they're nowhere near bringing in operators and doing acquiring. But what they are and what they might be interested in is singular focus on what it is they do. Knowing what you know now and knowing you've done a lot of research on holding companies, what are the things, like what are the advice for somebody who's coming in? And this is not even like a holding company. Like you have a small business and you have like a lot of SKUs or multi-revenue streams. It's like you're going to lose focus. So let's talk about focus and then really the lessons that you learn from that before we get into the business of your business.
Yeah. So, I in my 20s read a lot of books, right? It's like you see over and over in the books, oh, Warren Buffett, focus. Put all your eggs into one basket. Like you watch it like a hawk. And I've said that before. And you hear from a lot of people over and over, right? Bill Gates, everybody, it's just like focus. And you don't really take it seriously until you get punched in the face. And I got punched in the face multiple times. And don't get me wrong, like I like playing multiple games. I like doing multiple things. It just after over a period of time, you just realize that doesn't really work that well versus like just focusing on one because you're spreading it. And the analogy I like to use is like success is like maybe like a circle, right? So maybe you start in the middle of it to get to the edges of the circle, I suppose, right? That's success. But if you keep changing directions in the circle the whole time, like you'll never get there. But if you just went in a straight line, you'll get there. And that just tells me, the people get the entrepreneurial ADD is very real.
Yes.
It's very real with me. I think it's still real. I don't think it ever goes away. But I've learned to channel that entrepreneurial ADD into one business. And what I would say is, if I were to break it down into just one thing, if I think about everything I've learned from like a Warren Buffett, a Charlie Munger, it's just that all you need to do is stay on one business. You can do a lot of things within that business and not work on it for a year, not 5 years, not even 10 years, but multiple decades. And if you can do that for multiple decades and stay alive, then you will compound into something very big. And it's just, to me, it's inevitable. Like, you don't even need to think about the outcome. It will just happen no matter what.
This past weekend, I spent time with a group of friends, and that was the common theme. Is, are you willing to have the chutzpah and the dedication to focus on one thing? And having a conversation and having the courage to strip away things because it either made you feel good, look good, but you're like, there is a profit center in the business. And the less time that you spend with this, the more you're hurting yourself. So let's actually get into the business of your business. And I kind of teased out in the beginning, $2, I could have bought your business. There was a point in time for $2, I could have bought your business because that's exactly what you did. Let's start there, and then let's start just breaking it out.
Yeah. So I bought the business, and this was in 2014 or so. So the deal was, the original founder wanted to step out, and I still talk to the original founder. Neil was actually a shareholder as well.
Okay, so wait, let's pause here. For people who don't know, Neil Patel is good friend, co-podcast host. You guys both have agencies. So Neil is a partner in the company at the time.
At the time, yes.
And you come from outside the company, and he met you by way of tech.
Yeah, I didn't really talk about this too much before, so I guess I'll share this story, and then I'll also share the story about how Neil wanted me to become CEO of his current company and like be like a 50%
spill the
owner.
tea.
Yeah, I've
it's
never
afternoon. Spill the tequila. Let's go. Yeah.
So happy to talk about both. So the way it worked out was, I was leading marketing at a tech startup, and I basically came into the company for a month, and Neil was an advisor to the company. The CEO, a month into the job, said, "Hey, if you don't hit numbers this month, we're gonna have to fire you." I'm like, "What the hell? Like, I just got here. Like, just because someone else screwed up before me, it's not my fault, right?" And I'm like, "Okay, I can either cry about it, or I can do something about it." So I'm like, "Okay, you're gonna fire me." So I bet the entire company. I took all the budget and I just bet it on YouTube ads because I saw something. There's potential with it, but for whatever reason, they shut it down. So that was my claim to fame with that company. We went from acquiring less than 500 users a month to acquiring like 5,000 plus users a month. Got on Good Morning America, TechCrunch, everything, right? Raised our Series B, company saved. And then Neil's observing, and he's like, "Hey."
What was the tech company doing? Like, I don't need to know the company, but like what
online education. So we're teaching people coding and web design. Yeah. So and that was very hot back then. In 2010, it was super hot. Everyone should learn coding. Everyone should learn design, right?
Okay.
Probably not. But so then Neil's like, "Hey, why don't you come help save this failing like agency?" I was like, "I work in tech. Like, I'm too good for agent." I had already transcended agency before, right? I'm like 25 years old at this time. And then I was like, I thought about it. I was like, I reframed it. I was like, but if I can save this crappy agency, I can do anything, right?
Okay.
And so I come into the company. I come in as a chief operating officer, totally not an operating guy. But anyway, I come in, I take 10% of the company. A year goes by, company still...
So wait, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
Where are you based with the tech company?
So I leave.
No, wait, physically, where do you live?
I'm remote.
Okay.
I'm living in LA still. I'm remote, yeah.
So you're remote with this company. Neil is an advisor to the company. Am I assuming that you're meeting Neil by way of the interweb because you're not having an office?
Yeah. So
How old am I? Like 87? The interweb?
The interweb.
Did you guys meet on AOL? Yeah. No. You guys, how did you guys meet? And then when he offers you this opportunity and then brings you on as COO with 10%, like what? Where did?
Yeah. So I had met Neil probably when I was around 24 or 25.
Okay.
And I had actually, the way I met him was I was calling him out from a blog post that he wrote because I thought he was BSing. And then, usually when you call someone out, like you would just ignore that person that calls you out.
Not Neil.
No. And then he kept like responding to me. I was like, oh. And then he's like, hey, let's get on a Skype call. So he takes it deeper. Like he's going in a totally different direction. So we get on a Skype call, we talk. And then from then on, he just Skypes me. Hey, what do you think about this headline? So we're just kind of friends like that. And then he's finally like, hey, let's meet at Taco Bell, his favorite restaurant at the time. And then we end up meeting in like Orange County, Taco Bell. But he's like, hey, I got this like opportunity over here. So I interviewed and I was...
Can we just pause for a second?
Yeah.
I heard an interview with Neil and he said that he spends $250,000 a month. His living expenses are $250,000 a month. He was very open to it, explained exactly where things went. At the time when you're meeting and you're 24 years old and he's eating at Taco Bell, How much is he doing? Like,
He wasn't close to that yet. Yeah. So he was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. He was making good money, but he's very frugal, which is good.
Yes.
The apartment's probably like 600 square feet or so. He doesn't go outside. There's a bunch of spider webs and stuff. And then he has like a extra computer running like a follow Twitter. He just follows people on Twitter, and that's how his Twitter's so big. So
my God. Okay. You meet at Taco Bell. You guys become friends. So now he knows you real, human to human.
Yeah.
God.
So he tried to hire me to join Crazy Egg, which is his analytics company at the time. I wasn't interested. And then the agency thing was interesting to me because I would get shares in the company, significant shares. 10% is pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
But then
can I ask,
go ahead.
when he offered you the 10%, was there
it wasn't
any
him.
sort of...
It was his cousin that runs the company. So Neil only owned 10% of the company at the time.
So his cousin offers you 10%, the same amount that Neil has in the company. Do you have to pay for it, or is it part of just luring you over from
Part of luring me over.
Oh, that's so good.
And Neil actually vouches for me midway. He's like, he tells the founder that, hey, you're not going to keep him for 10%. So he's like warning him that you're not. And so... And anyway, the original founder, he's great. So we actually had, it was 5 people. It was 1 yellow guy and then 4 brown guys. So it's 4 Indians, right? So Neil and then his cousin and like his good friend and all that, and then his partner. So a year goes by, and then the original founder decides he's done, right?
Okay.
And then Neil tells me, because the company's still going down, like we weren't really recovering from. Just to get nerdy, the Google Panda update, the Google Penguin update.
Yes.
So back then, like it made it really hard. Like the work we were doing didn't work anymore. And
the agency was what for what specifically?
We were doing SEO work for like Salesforce, Airbnb, and all these companies. And then so a year goes by, and then he decides, hey, it's time to shut it down, maybe, or maybe even sell it to me. And then Neil calls me on the side. He's like, hey, as a friend, there's nothing here. There's no brand equity. There's nothing. And then in my mind, I'm like, I don't care. Like to me, the upside's unlimited if it works, but the downside's capped because I negotiated a clause saying that if the company fails, I would owe nothing. So the deal was structured $2 out of pocket, $1 for Neil's shares, another $1 for his partner shares. So I took over their shares, and then I was seller financing the rest, right? But I was paying it through the profits of the company. And I owed I ended up paying out like another $100,000 or something.
Okay.
But again, if the company failed, I would owe nothing. And I didn't even know what I was negotiating at the time. I was just like, whatever felt right to me.
Okay. So you get this failing company, and you think the most I lose is $100,000. And you're like, basically the upside.
Not even my money. It's the company's
money.
Yeah.
Oh, so you lose $2.
Yeah.
You lose a parking spot on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Man. Right time, right place, right brain.
Yeah.
Okay. So you take over the business, and then I'm expecting to hear a success story. Overnight success.
No.
I know.
I make it go from bad to worse. So we drop all the way down to 1 employee because I read this book called, I take some of these books a little too literally. So I read this book called Let My People Go Surfing from the Patagonia co-founder.
Okay.
And then it talks about, his people go surfing in the middle of lunch. And I'm like, that sounds good. Let my people go surfing. So you know what I do? I disappear from the office. And this is the whole thing. It's like, oh, I want to see people grow. It's like, no, like you need to be there. You need to be the annoying parent. You need to be the chief reminder officer. And that was the first time where I experienced me not being involved, everything kind of falling apart.
Got it.
We dropped all the way down to 1 employee. Funny enough, I talked to that 1 employee yesterday. He's doing very well right now. He's he's getting married. Like we're still having conversations. I'm so proud of you. And he's working at like a big agency, right? And anyway, we got lucky. So as I'm taking the business, we get the
you're surfing.
As I'm surfing, literally, like figuratively, I guess.
Yes.
So we end up getting the #1 ranking for digital marketing agency, the keyword. So if you search digital marketing agency, we're ranking. So everyone's coming to us, leads.
Okay.
We can't fulfill anymore.
Because you don't have a team.
There's no more team.
Got it.
And then, so we end up sending the leads out. Neil's like, oh, I send these leads to this agency over here. And they sold for $400 million recently, by the way. So then we started sending the leads there, and we get like a 25 to 30% commission on those. And so we were just milking that ranking, and that was the gift that kept on giving for like 2 years or so.
Wow. So you essentially went from agency to affiliate, built up to back to an agency.
Yeah. And fortunately enough, we got lucky. If we didn't get that, like that dovetailed into hiring some key people at the right time. And I got lucky with those hires. And then I was really involved for the next 2-3 years or so. And then, I drank the Kool-Aid on, the Holdco stuff, which we can go into that evolution. But, I think after the Holdco stuff, I really learned. And now this year, we've grown probably the fastest we've ever grown, that you just can't beat an involved founder. Like there's something about founder blood, but also like involved founder blood.
So what do you think is attributing to the pretty significant growth? I mean, yes, we're going to, herald Buffett and Munger and Siu with your focus.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. So we've always been getting the leads that we've been getting. I think the key thing for us, and you hear this a lot when it comes to hiring, is you hire people that have been there, done that. And it's not, people take that lightly sometimes. When you trust your team, you have to be micromanaging that. And what I mean is hiring people that have been there, done that. Okay, ideally, they've been promoted not one time, but 2 times. That means the company really values them. They're not job hopping every year or 2 or so. That means they're probably not that good. So a history of promotions, ideally, they've worked for your competitors. And for us, coming down to the core values again, our top core value is to be improved and obsessed. And that keyword obsessed is really intense. And so we look for those examples. We look for those signals. So to me, everything comes down to talent management and talent acquisition, which really isn't different than any company.
How do you measure for improvement obsession?
Yeah. So one question we asked, I did a webinar on AI today. It was a bunch of YPO people. YPO is like one of those entrepreneur groups.
Yes.
So one thing we do is we ask them, hey, like, what have you done with AI recently? If they're a little more kind of mid-senior level, they're not junior in the career, what have you done recently with AI? Don't just say ChatGPT, right? And if they can't give a really impressive example, that's okay. We'll continue on that thread. We'll say, okay, well, Jasmine, tell me what's the most impressive thing you've done in your career as it relates to this role, and tell us why you consider it to be impressive. And they'll say, oh yeah, we built this team over here and drove 10 million in revenue for Hyundai or something, right? Well, what was your role in that? Well, I was just account manager or something. And turns out they didn't really do much, right? But they tried to take that credit. So 2 things. You had to dive for that answer. That's going to be how it's working with them. You had to dig in for it. 2, it doesn't seem like they're that truthful, right? So those are like 2 ways to kind of suss it out.
Got it. Okay. So you make a few key hires. It changes the structure of the business. And when you get in and you realize I'm building an agency, the agency is still SEO focused. You are then getting those leads and you're turning them into customers. What has been the growth like? What has been the growth journey? Yeah.
So I would say it started with SEO, but the key with agency type businesses is, and there's a really good book called The 7 Powers. It's called 7 Powers, actually. It's a strategic book. And it talks about, with agencies specifically, the key thing that we have are the power of switching costs, meaning that the more services we can layer on, the more of a pain in the ass it is for them to cancel. So if we do a pretty good job on all of them.
See, the icky turns into sticky. Yep. That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you want to have multiple services, and you want to do a pretty good job, obviously.
Yeah.
And then that grows the lifetime value of the customer. The retention goes up a lot more because we used to have Amazon before, and we just helped them with paid media. And we helped Amazon ads run ads. We helped with their Amazon Alexa, not the Echo, but they had an SEO software. And we helped with another division, 3 divisions. That could have expanded into something really big. But at the end, they left and they're like, dude, we love you guys and we love all the strategic thinking you have, but you just don't have enough services. Same thing happened with Lyft. We had Lyft and we're helping them with enterprise B2B. And then it came time they wanted to grow even more. But when we lost the deal ultimately, so we had them for like 2 years or so, but then they're like, dude, we didn't even know you guys had all these things. And so that to me was a big takeaway. How can you have multiple things, and how do you have people that have been there, done that in all of those? And then these people will tell you what to do, but you just got to be there on top, being really involved.
Okay. So I've known you. I actually met Neil at a dinner in LA. I had no idea who Neil was. I happened to be sitting across from him, and I could not figure him out. Like I sat there and I'm like, oh, yeah. Is he like intentionally being mean to me? And it was not that. Yeah. Neil is the most honest, kind, straightforward, but he says exactly what's on his mind. He doesn't give a rip what anybody says. So when I reached out and I attended one of your masterminds in Beverly Hills, I got a chance to see Neil again. Neil was 100% Neil, and I like him. I like his vibe. I like that you know exactly where you stand with him, and I like that and it's not for everybody, I get it, but I like that 100% what he's thinking, and pulls no punches. You both sat on a panel as part of your mastermind. You guys did a Q&A, and you guys went on this riff that I found really fascinating around why owning an agency is the best type of business to own when a lot of people are running away from it because it's like, whoa, more money, more problems. It's like, this is a people business. So explain to me your big push for why you built an agency and why you still think it's, or do you still think it's one of the best businesses to have?
I think so. When I took it over, I was actually ashamed of it because I cared too much about what others thought, right? I came from tech. Like I come from Asians are very into status, right? So it's like status games, right? So it's like, I'm up here, but all of a sudden, like I'm doing the service business, right?
Okay.
And so first I was like, the first couple of years, I think I was really annoyed that I was associated with it.
Okay.
And that was more of me problem more than anything. But what I've learned over the years, and this is what Neil and I talk about, it's every business sucks. Over time, like as you learn more about it, it just sucks. And it's just you decide how much pain you want to deal with. But the great thing about an agency is if you grow it really big, maybe you can cash flow 5, 10, 15, $20 million a year. That's an exit every year. Right. Not only that, if you do get it to like 10, 20, 30 in profit, your multiple, even today's day and age, you can maybe sell for 15x or so, right? So 15, like people think agencies, maybe you can only sell it for 3x. So let's say you do $1 million, you can only sell it for like $3-4 million, which is decent, right? But if you get it to 10 million, maybe you can sell it for 100 million, 150, or maybe even 200 or so, even in this bad economy right now. So you can have a very nice exit if you want, or you can just cash flow the thing. And, Neil and I had a private conversation a couple of years ago. I'm not going to give too many details, but he got a really good offer, right? And I'm like, you're already rich. Like, you don't need, what are you going to do after? He's like, oh, yeah, you're right. I'd probably just do the same thing. And Zuck had that story too. Like, oh, you can sell it and get 250 million of the billion. And he's like, well, then what would I do next? And so if you really like what you do, but everybody else is on Twitter is talking about selling all the time. But if you really like what you do, why don't you just do it for a long time?
Yeah. We sat at lunch and he said that story and how it had an impact on him and how he moved to Vegas for a minute and then moved back to LA. And part of the reason why he's willing to, that same undercurrent of how much pain are you willing to endure? It's like taxes in California, specifically taxes in Beverly Hills. Yeah. They are not for the faint of heart. Yeah. And so he had said, how much pain are you willing to endure? And I think that Neil endures a lot of pain because he derives so much pleasure from the build and specifically where like building his home here in Beverly Hills and all the other pain that is associated with that. When you guys look at that growth structure, somebody looks at this business that you built, tens of millions of dollars, and perhaps the way that you're running it, 10 to 15x multiple. Someone was like, man, that's the business I want to get into. He started with nothing and was able to layer and grow. If somebody likes that idea and is like, maybe that's a skill set I have. Maybe I'm strong operator, service-based. Maybe I can build a team. Yeah. Where do you suggest somebody who's listening right now, they don't have a lot of money and they don't have agency experience? Yeah. I want to talk here.
Yeah. So one thing, a couple threads here. So the agency, the great thing about agency again is you don't need to outlay a lot of cash up front. Okay, so that's great. Not a lot of startup costs, and then you can kind of learn at your own pace. Neil and I, we started this agency owners association group, kind of like EO or YPO, but for agency owners.
Oh, I heard about this. Yeah. Okay.
So
right now, do you have to pay to be a part of it?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
And then now we've realized, we probably only need we want agency owners that are above 6 figures because that means they've already done something.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't have below, right? So,
got it.
Anyway, so we started that, and we're learning from a lot of people. Like a lot of people.
Okay, but why did you start it? Just pure revenue, networking?
The real reason, yes, there's networking revenue, and like I like to build community. Yeah. But long term, is there an angle for us to partner with some of these agencies or even buy some of these agencies? Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's funny because I brought this idea up to Neil a couple years ago. And you work with someone for 8 years.
You get to see all the skeletons because they want to share the skeletons to beat the skeletons. But if you know that you have a skill set and you know that their growth and ambition is not trending towards squashing that skeleton, you're like, we could squash it and we could grow it. Dang, that's...
And there's a beauty in that too, because there's someone we're talking to right now, like they do a couple million a year, and I basically coached him up for a couple years. And Neil and I, we don't do coaching, but in this case, we're kind of doing group coaching in a sense. And so we kind of get the benefit of it. And the ones that are doing 7 to 8 figures, we'll just do a mastermind once a year, and then we'll meet with them in person, build more of a relationship. And maybe they can partner up with each other or whatever, but we're just trying to build community and eventually see what we can do there. But one thing I want to mention about Neil, going back to your question, he was really good at understanding that he's terrible with people, and everybody knows that, Neil, right? So he's not good with people and people management specifically. The good news is, even though I didn't do the deal with him, he had Mike Akemo, which is his good friend. So Mike, he gave Mike some shares in the company.
Do what deal with him?
To start MP Digital, his agency.
His agency. Okay, so you did not do the agency with Neil, but Neil brought in somebody else.
He had somebody that's been working with him for a while. So actually, him, Mike, and I were sitting at a hotel in SLS, not too far from here, and this was probably 2017 or 2018.
Okay.
And then they're like, okay, well, Eric, you take 50%, and then we'll take the rest, right? And then Neil understood that he needed someone operating boots on ground because he's really good. The good thing about him is he's either really good at something or he's really bad at something.
Okay.
And so he's really good at driving traffic. He's really good with numbers. His memory is exceptional, but he's really bad with like the nitty-gritty around people management. So he wanted Mike and myself to take that over. And I think it would have been a great partnership. I don't think I was ready for that at the time because I wanted to do all these different things because it was so fun, right? So that all connects. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't do the agency with him.
Mm-hmm.
You are building your own agency. Now you guys have a group and then a mastermind for agency owners.
Mm-hmm.
There is the long play here to get possibly acquiring a company that does something similar to what you do, expand your customer base and optimize. When somebody's hearing this, there's not a lot of startup costs.
Mm-hmm.
You now know it's best to serve your customer at an LTV, make it more sticky for them. But somebody who's just starting out, I don't have a lot of money. What is one thing that you're saying, okay, you could start an agency and be very highly specialized around one thing. Can we ideate and like brainstorm around an idea?
Yeah.
Someone's like, yeah, I'm pretty good with Canva, or, I'm kind of good with copy.
Yeah.
Let's start with building an agency. Let's make a way for people to make money with the idea of building an agency.
Yeah. Ideally, it's something that's trending in the right direction and there's a lot of demand right now. So I'll tell you what's in super demand right now is ad creatives. So someone that's really good with ad creatives because the ad creatives bring the CPAs down when you're spending a lot on ads. Community management's actually growing up, but I'm going to leave that alone for a moment. We'll just say ad creative and then organic social, like those two areas. I would start there. Yeah.
Okay.
The community thing, it's like it's coming up, but it's like I don't think it's achieved escape velocity yet, so I'll leave that alone.
Okay, so let's just say somebody's really good with organic. What I see specifically in my niche of the world is people are good with organic. They take on 3 to 4 clients. They get extraordinarily burnt out. And then they get into stuck in the minutia and they're not making enough money to start abdicating some of the responsibilities within it. How do you overcome that if you're like, oh, I want to grow? Yeah.
So chances are they're probably not charging enough because when you start out, like when I first started, I was charging like, I don't know, $20 an hour or something, $25 an hour. So you underprice yourself because you're desperate for clients.
Right.
But then as the demand goes up, you just need to charge more. So raising your prices is huge. It's one of the highest levers you can pull. So that's one thing. And then I think your prices go up, so you now have more margin to hire some people. Then you need to figure out, I like so you just define, you make an Excel sheet, and then for each column you have $10, $100, $1,000 an hour, $10,000 an hour. Just define all the tasks that you're doing right now. And your goal is to offload all the $10 an hour tasks, like as quickly as possible. Every quarter, so you're offloading maybe 15% or so. And then maybe you're getting to $100 an hour task. And so then all you're working on is a $10,000 an hour task, $100,000 an hour task, $1 million an hour task, like negotiating a deal or like some type of M&A thing.
So you probably get a lot of people pitching you. So I get a lot of people who will say, I will edit a short for you.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of pitches for I design thumbnails.
Yeah.
I get a lot of pitches because I create so much organic content.
Yeah.
People come in and like, I want to shoot your organic content. Like I'll come to you and then they charge a really low amount of money.
Yeah.
To me, I don't want to get into it because I can already tell you're not seasoned enough. How do people, what's advice that you have for somebody who, number one, is looking for somebody to help them, but then also for somebody who's trying to get pitched?
Yeah.
Like, what am I looking for? How do I start scaling that?
Yeah. Anybody that wants to go get Alex's book, not the book, the workbook actually, for $100 million offer. So again, not the book, the workbook. It'll just tell you what a good offer looks like. And then you work through the workbook and then you have a good offer, right? And most people, like what you're telling me, like you would never click on that stuff. I have people hitting me up. Yeah, I'll do. Why didn't you just do it in the first place? Like,
okay, slow down. So we don't talk fast, people listen slow. So when you say they send me something, but they didn't do it, let's go back. So I get hit up all the time. Like, can I repurpose some of the content from your podcast?
Yeah.
Here are samples of other work that I've done.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, 0.
Yeah.
And I am not watching that long form to see what kind of short form you produced.
Yeah.
What they should have done was created an 11-second breakout from a YouTube video that they saw, because then I can immediately see how it works for me.
And plus my blood boils too when I see that, because it's like, that's the best you can do. You're trying to make it work for yourself, and that's the best you can do. So, because it takes us back to the early days, right? I'm like, you could have done so much better. And now I'm even more turned off because that's the best you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So people pitch me for thumbnails. And I literally, this is how, like, I don't know how much I should be paying for thumbnails, and I don't know how much I should be paying for a good thumbnail designer. Like, get into the nitty gritty. If somebody's pitching me, like, how do I know what's good or obscene?
So the best offers I've seen, and a couple of people I've gotten through in the last couple of years, like, for example, our AV guy that helps with the podcast, he cold DM'd me on Instagram. And it was a good offer. Like, okay, here's a good offer. There's actually a thumbnail guy he's like, I'm just going to work for you for free for a month. Here's an example of one. And if you like it,
see,
great.
like, they get it. They get it. So he worked for you for free. Mm-hmm. He did A/B testing of like how it improved after he changed the thumbnails.
Yeah, and they weren't necessarily even better performing. They just looked a lot better, and that totally changed our art direction for our thumbnails moving forward.
Oh,
yeah.
If you are listening right now and you want to work for other people, send them work. But here's the thing. When I Google like average cost for a designer to create a YouTube thumbnail, they say anywhere from like 25 to 35. And if this guy pitched me and he said it was 100, what kind of test can I set up? I'm like, okay, great. I'll test one thumbnail.
Yeah.
Am I testing 8? Like from your agency perspective, how do we start going and judging the veracity of or talent?
It's worth it if it's $100 versus 25. If it just performs way better. But we had another thumbnail guy actually reach out, and he did. I think he's like, one's not enough. I'm gonna do 10 for you for free, and then after that, it's gonna be $75 per thumbnail. And I was like, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
And the first 10 were amazing. We worked with him for a little bit, and then eventually the team was like, hey, we can just do this. So the team just like took the style, and like that was it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you also got to make sure that this is, again, like, if your work is not that defensible, it's pretty easy to copy, then what do you think the business is going to do? They're probably going to just copy it and move on. So
good. Okay. And so like, let's play here again. So I get pitched for somebody to create content for me, but at the rate that they're like, for me, be on time. I think it's like such a low bar. It's just be on time. Yep. Can you just give me the deliverable when you say you're going to give me the deliverable?
Be reliable.
Be freaking reliable. I don't even think it's that much to ask, but it's like, just hit your freaking deadline. And the people that we work with currently, our editors and some of our creators, they pitched me in my DM and we navigated that. And I think it's really good. Yeah. How do we start setting a standard? Because when we're working with creatives, it's just like, how do you hit your deadlines? Yeah. And what am I holding you to? And in the agency, you see this a lot. So what do we do for our creative teams?
So I have this standards of excellence document. So we have our internal wiki, obviously. And one time I was so tilted. This was during like the cleanup with the acquisitions last couple of years. I was just like, man, we haven't defined what excellence looks like. So I spent one Saturday, I probably wrote like 4,000 words that day. Just like, here are standards of excellence. So every new hire, full-time hire, I'll start with the full-time people first. They are required to initial that document. So you have to read the whole thing. You have to initial every page, and that proves that you've read it. So you understand what our standards of excellence are, and that's what we're going to hold you accountable to. And whatever I can remember, I'm happy to dive into it. But we realized with our contractors, we weren't holding them to the same standards. And so, they'd get amazing work from our full-time people, but they get subpar work from the contractors. And so now when the contractors join us, it's like, oh, hey, you have to read our standards of excellence. If it's not good for you, then that's okay. We don't have to work together. But that's raised the bar, and they know that we're holding them to the same standards that we hold our full-time people to.
Okay, so they initial it. There's the standard of excellence. What happens when somebody becomes in against that, an infraction? What is your barometer of how long you tolerate?
It's quick. And by the way we do things is people talk about criticizing in private, right? Praising in public. So I praise in public, definitely. But I've kind of changed my stance over the last couple of years. Now, let's say I make a mistake in your company. Sure, that's on your dime. But I made the mistake. Why would you deprive the other people of the learnings? And so as long as you can be respectful about giving the feedback in front of other people, that's how we do it now.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So we had, let me think about this for a second. Okay. So we had this is when I was going too far. So we had a contractor recently, and he was helping with our blog, and his job was to mainly focus on the AI assisted content and from our podcast. And so he's repurposing a lot of content. And every week we'd go into the marketing meeting, and then sometimes I'd step in and be like, hey man, like this isn't like, I'm just going to pause for a second. So-and-so, I'm sorry to use it as an example publicly, but I want to give the learnings to everyone. Are you okay with that? He says yes, right? So then I'm like, okay, look, this isn't up to our standards of excellence. The words you're using are from a couple months ago. The phrase itself has changed in this. So I was giving him like direct feedback. I was like, we need
Stating
to be
facts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here are the facts over here, and then this is how I feel. I feel like we're not going to be able to produce high quality work, and that's going to affect everybody here because other people are going to have to cover for you. And he's like, that's fair feedback. Thank you for that. We did that for probably another 2-3 weeks or so, and then after
with the
that,
same person,
and then it was
in front of people,
Ooh. and then we let him go. Finally, I was like, guys, we have to move on. And then my developer messages me on the side. The developer in that meeting, he's like, dude, took you long enough. So we have that. It's built in now. Where we made a job offer to someone this morning, and he's like, dude, I feel it in your culture, like the improvements in your water. Like I want to drink that water. So I'm like, great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then also what it says for the people who are watching. Like your level of respect for that person, and then how long the tolerance is, and then the team can be like, thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Took you long enough.
and people hold me accountable too in meetings. Like they'll call me out straight up in front of everyone, and I love that. Like
that's good.
It's like
That's good.
I write the checks, right? And so like I get there's a fear.
What's
but
like an example of something that somebody has called you out on that you really appreciated that maybe other people leaders would not want to hear?
Yeah. So one guy was like, hey, like. Eric, I think we're working on too many things right now. And I think we should focus on this thing. It seems like it has the best opportunity. I was like, and I paused for a second. I was like, yeah, you're right. We should do that. Because I talk really fast. I move really quickly. Sometimes I just need I need to surround myself with people that would just not be afraid to call me out and not be afraid to slow things down.
I love that. Those are my favorite people on my team. People who like challenge me. And I think that the culture has become, we challenge each other to make each other better. And I am not above any sort of like feedback or criticism. So, okay. So we go back, starting very simply an agency. Somebody has a skill set. If I was a copywriter, I should essentially be creating free copy to people as part of my pitch.
Yeah.
An overabundance that has been very specialized or personalized to that person or business.
Yeah.
Once you do that, every quarter, you're going to be offloading 15% of the $10 an hour tasks. And then you start spending more time on the $10,000 tasks. Do you then say, if you're saying, I'm building an agency, do you go deeper with the copywriting services to make it sticky? Or do you say, I did copywriting, but now I can take that copy and put it into a graphic?
Yeah.
How soon do you start expanding?
You know what the number one cause of startup deaths are?
What?
Premature scaling. So it's and I made this mistake many times. I still think I might continue to make these mistakes, but it's thinking that you're better than you are already, and not going deep enough in that core service to make it super excellent and make it super remarkable where you're getting a ton of word of mouth. So the best agencies, maybe 50% of their customers are coming through referrals, word of mouth. That's when you know you have something really good. And then your retention rates maybe like, 80%, 85% annually, right? Because there's going to be churn every now and then. And so if you're doing those two things and your net promoter score is very high with customers, okay, then you can maybe consider expanding. And their clients will start to ask for stuff. Hey, what do you think about this? We actually need a lot of help with this over here. You start to hear that more and more. That becomes a signal. And then maybe you start to test that with other contractors to start. And if it does really well, then you can think about hiring full-time people.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. So when you talk about, I could possibly keep on making this mistake. Cool. Can we talk about a mistake that almost bankrupt your business?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's...
And I just want to pause. I want to pause. I really want to say thank you for your ability to talk about these things, because you're not just talking about this big, amazing business that you've built and all the wins and successes. You're really saying there was a ton of mistakes and it got very ugly. And I think it's so inspiring and powerful for people who are listening. So thank you. But let's talk about that.
I don't think enough people talk about these things. There are always, I don't care what business you're in, there's always a time where you're going to come close to bankrupting. So in the very beginning, it was me not being involved enough. And I didn't learn my lesson the first time. So again, let my people go surfing, not showing up to the office, right? And then hearing from people, dude, I had a guy that he actually taught me digital marketing. He's like a little bit younger than me, but he's like, dude, you have your people coming into work now wearing pajamas and slippers and watching Family Guy and not doing anything, right? That's where it got to.
Okay.
And even when that happened, I still didn't show up, right? So it's on me, because I'm like, no, you should. And my mom even called me out on this. She's not a business person. She's like, you think they're just going to run the business for you? Who do you think you are, right? And I just had this rosy outlook. Anyway, so that happened the first time. Okay, that was within the first year. And then I would say probably 3-4 years ago, when we were doing too many things at once.
Okay, but let's go back to starting the business was how many years ago?
Taking over the business was 10 years ago.
So then like halfway into the journey of where you are now, a pattern revealed itself. Okay.
Yep. And then doing too many things again, and then decided to step away and watch people do it. I have this thing where I just want to watch people do it, right? Like, I can figure it out. You can do it too, right? Yeah. And then doesn't work. I would say probably 3-4 years ago, came close to bankrupting again.
Okay.
Yeah. And so now...
What was the reason for that?
Because I just wasn't involved.
So you wanted to watch your operators operate. Instead of saying abdication, like everybody goes surfing, it was like, I'm just going to step back and watch how good you are.
It wasn't delegation. It was abdication. And in...
Explain the difference real quick. And from your perspective as an agency owner, you're clearly winning. You're doing a lot of things great. That comes on the back of a lot of like punches in the face.
Yeah.
Describe the difference between abdication and delegation.
So delegation is when you hand something off to someone, but you're still holding them accountable and you're still kind of helping them where they need it. You still have your eyes on it. Abdication is you're handing it off and you're going off to do something else, right? So for me, doing something else wasn't like I was going to go like party or anything. Right. I don't like partying. It was more so like I was just going to work on software and other things, right? Again, too many things. I was like, oh, you got it? You've been there, done that. You got it? Oh, and you read on Twitter. Yeah, hire people, been there, done that, and get out of their way. No, doesn't work like that. They like to think it works like that, but now the people that have been tweeting that from like 4 years ago, the chickens have come to roost and their companies are not doing well. And a lot of those CEOs have quit because... By the way, you need hired gun CEOs. I'm going to go in a little deeper here. You need hired gun CEOs, but you have to hold them accountable because they're just not going to care as much as the founder. Like there's a certain energy you have. There's a certain way you want things done. And you have this magic that you imbue into the company and nobody can ever take that away. And I'll go to Neil for a second too. He is calling his CFO like 15 times a day, right? Maybe a little too much, right? But he's calling his people all the time. He's like, not necessarily cracking the whip, but he's on top of it.
Got it.
Hey, how are numbers today? How are numbers today? How are numbers today? Every freaking day, right?
Got it.
That's what you got to do.
And so when you go back to 4 or 5 years ago, what happened at that point in time? It was just I stepped back, and then how long did you wait?
I stepped back, and even when I stepped back in, I was still hoping someone would step up, and I that took longer than it should have. But the moment I was fully in, everything was flying again. And I'm not saying like I'm amazing or anything. I'm just saying like if you have founder blood in there, if you have multiple co-founders, that magic cannot be duplicated. And, I used to think it was BS. Like you can't have someone that's like a 10X or 100X person. No, the founders are those 10X, 100X people. And rightfully so, because they're incentivized to do well. So,
okay. So let's go back to where you are now. What is the future version of you? If you look at 10 years, first kind of like gut punch, second gut punch, full in focus, dialed in, holding people accountable, delegation, not abdication. What do you want in the next 5 years?
I just want to keep playing the game. So I want to keep playing. Like I think a lot's going to change in the next 5-10 years, and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But I want to play this until I die. I just want to keep playing because to me, it's just like my joy, everything I get, and I had Neil take this personality test, right?
Okay.
So for him, it's really funny. So
What personality test?
It's called Principles U. Have you taken it?
No.
Oh my God, best personality test ever.
Okay.
So you watch, we can compare results after. Okay. It's like 95% accurate. I even use it in dating
Principle
too.
U as in university or YOU?
Oh, sorry. Like Principles YOU. It's from Adam Grant and Ray Dalio.
I love Adam Grant.
Best thing ever. So go take it. Works for any type of relationship, whether it's work, your spouse, whatever.
Okay.
So I look at Neil's thing and it shows that he's like 1% intrinsically motivated. I'm 99% intrinsically motivated. And we talked about this on the phone. So he's like, yeah, I never thought you cared about money, like ever. Like meeting you the first time, I don't care, right? But at the same time, like it's a nice way to keep score. And so like, he's very money motivated and that's fine. That's his personality. For me, I just want to keep playing this game and I have no doubt in my mind, like I'm not tied to the outcome at all, but I'm like, yeah, I think we're going to build, it's going to be a great outcome, right? It could be 9, maybe 10 figures. Who knows, right? Like a lot of these agency companies, holding companies become that. But it took me, once I got punched in the face 4 or 5 years ago, that was when I really realized like, I'm just going to focus on one thing. Yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, you and Neil are competitors?
Yeah.
How much of a competitor? Like apples to apples? Service to service?
We have a couple of related services. They have other things and we have other things they don't do. So,
okay.
But I would say that the main difference with us is that he's got this global operation right now, and he's focusing on just acquiring globally. He got a little too. I knew he would get aggressive, and we talked about this on Monday. He's like, yeah, I got a little too aggressive, but it's global expansion for him. And for me, I'm more focused on the tech of what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years or so.
What do you mean the tech? Like, let's talk there.
Yeah.
Let's with the tech of what's happening.
So what I tell my team almost every single week right now, I was like, guys, we need to have not just a high talent bar, but an unreasonably high talent bar. Unreasonably high. And the reason for that is because I believe that in the next 5-10 years, we can only afford to hire the top 5% of people. And that doesn't mean that everyone else is trash. It just means for us specifically, someone like you're going to have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 AI agents working for you, or drop-in remote workers, right? They will understand all your thought patterns. They'll understand all the things you've done. They'll understand all your weaknesses. They'll understand all your preferences as well. And what you're lacking right now is just manpower, right? You're going to have infinitely patient robots that understand everything about you, and they'll work way better than you. And so that's going to be a lot of leverage. And imagine if we have only the top 5% of people, they understand how to do all this stuff. That means that the business model changes. So for typical agency, maybe you're charging, a retainer $1,000 a month, $10,000, $100,000 a month, whatever. Maybe you're charging percentage of ad spend. I think that model's broken. I think the way of the agencies of the future in a lot of businesses is you charge on performance or you charge on a usage basis. So.
What are you moving to?
Those two. Because I have a friend, 2 friends actually. I'll call it 2 friends with agencies. One agency does over $1 billion a year in revenue, and it's all pay for performance.
Wow.
Meaning that, okay, so So Jasmine, I buy ads for you. Okay, you're not going to take on any risk. I'm going to take on the risk. If I perform, you pay me on each customer I acquire for you. That's it, right? It's an affiliate model, but not many agencies do that. So that's one. I think the way we're going to be able to track.
Wait, pause.
Yeah.
Are you there now? Is that what you're doing now?
No, we're moving at there's a lot of things that we're building right now that are moving in that direction. I've always wanted to do that.
Do you think, because you probably be one of the first agencies to move, one of them for sure, do you think you're at a competitive disadvantage for a certain point, or are you attracting somebody who is a lot more risk averse? Are you somebody who expects more? Do they become resentful down the line when they're just like, damn, they're making so much money off product and we absorb a cost that they don't?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. So one, I would say if we want to take a risk with like a newer service, maybe that's 10 to 20% of our portfolio. And then the other 80% is like stabilizers. So I could go out and take my shots. And in terms of the resentment, so the friend that does $1 billion a year, they work with the same companies. It's been the same companies over the last 10, 15 years or so. And then the other friend, they do 40 million in profit a year, and they only have like 40 employees.
Wow.
So that's 1 million in profit per employee. That's huge.
Huge.
Yeah. And they've worked with the same clients too. And so if you do, by the way, let's say, your client decides to cut you out. Oh my God, you're making too much money. Great. I'm going to go to your competitor. I'm going to tell them all the numbers, and I'm just going to roll this over there. And that's exactly what the second friend does.
And wait, so do you as an agency not have a non-compete, or like do your clients request that of you? Because could you not just use the same theory and apply it across the board?
Typically, there's no non-competes. No.
Okay, so even if you said, okay, that's fine, we're not going to work together, but I'm going to go to your competitor, could you already not be working with your competitor?
Well, you want to focus all your efforts on one. You shouldn't do too many. You should have one pay for performance client per niche, ideally. So he's focused on the finance niche. He doesn't try to take on too many different clients. Yeah.
Wow, I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
So if you had to guess, time horizon to that, what do you think?
I think probably the next 5 years or so. So we're building a product right now. We're building multiple products, but one is a product that will align your landing pages with your ad creative and your Google ad groups. And so that should lift conversion rates up. We might just give that away for free. But the cool thing is—
Give that away for free to who?
To anybody that wants to use it for themselves, right? Any customers, because it's going to generate leads for us, right? Do you
I do.
Yeah.
I feel like my mind is being blown right now.
And so if we do that well, here's the other thing. Let's say that's just a feature, but all the enterprise companies or mid-market companies that connect their ad accounts to that, we're going to have a lot of data, and we're going to be able to storytell with a lot of data. There's a lot of case studies we can make. Plus, we can probably build other stuff that's tied to that data. We can see all the inefficiencies across different industries. There aren't a lot of products out there that have a lot of ad data.
Are you an agency that's really leaning more towards tech? Or how, in your relation to investment and time spent with tech, how is it industry wide? Or do you head more in that direction?
I tend to look a lot into the future. That's probably my strength. So Neil has said this, like, I'm really good at looking into the future. He's more about, he will look at whatever works and just go really deep on it. I like reading a lot. I like talking to a lot of people about the future and seeing what's happening. If we can reprogram our bodies, we can CRISPR ourselves, right? There's just a lot of things we can do. So I try to stay at the cutting edge with that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So as we tie things up, we went very high, and there's like different levels of entrepreneurs who are listening. Let's go back to the person. Let's put yourself in the shoes of the gritty entrepreneur who has a skill or a talent, who think they have the ability, the desire to build out an agency. Mm-hmm. They're here, and you say you want to build. What advice are you seeing? What advice would you give them based on what you're seeing right now is performing, what they should be doing? How do they spend their very limited time to get the maximum return?
Yeah. So your question's more around how should they invest their time right now?
Yeah, specifically in growth.
Yeah. So I would maybe I try to read at least an hour to 2 every day. Let's just say an hour. So you're reading an hour a day, whether it's you're reading newsletters or you're reading books or whatever. You're just trying to get better, right? Because you're gaining outside perspective that way. Or maybe you're in networking groups or masterminds or whatever. So that's one piece of it. The other piece, this is somebody that's starting out?
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody that's starting out, you should be focusing on getting, you're the janitor, you're doing everything. So you're out there getting business. So a lot of business development, that's going to be a large chunk of your time. Let's call that, I don't know, let's say that takes 2-3 hours of your time. I remember in the very beginning, this was before we had Loom or anything. I was making these 20-minute videos that took forever to upload. And I was just like analyzing your website. Hey, here are all the things that are wrong with your website. And I would send like 20 of those a day. It was a lot. So let's see. I think I was probably spending like 4 or 5 hours on that per day. And I was also writing on Quora as well. I was writing on all these, engaging in all these communities. Okay. So you got to be scrappy. Like, yes, you got to find an amazing offer. The move now is probably to DM people that you really like. And eventually you get that flywheel going. Maybe 3-6 months into it, you're going to start to convert people. I remember I wrote like a answer on Quora, and then someone randomly reached out, hey, I saw this answer. Like, this was like 6 months later. It's like, hey, we'll work with you. $30,000 a month contract, right? And I was still working like at a job. Anyway, so a lot of time spent on business development, and then probably the rest of your time you're spent on fulfilling, meaning that you're actually doing the work because you're broke right now. You have nothing. So you're trying to get better mentally, right? You are fulfilling, you're actively doing business development, you're doing outreach. And then the other thing too is you got to take care of your body, right? You take care of your body, I take care of my body. It's like you don't take care of your body, you got nothing. And so some people just let themselves go. And that just blows my mind. I don't know how, right? But I think it's those 4 things.
Thank you so much for that. And so knowing what you know now, there's a person who says, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to start with my biz dev. I'm going to be sending DMs, but they're going to be personalized. I'm going to show them what I can do. I'm going to be spending my time on the fulfillment of that. Where are they going for business growth? Like somebody, let's go copywriter, thumbnail designer, and organic marketer. What platforms are they going to?
So wait, this is a thumbnail person?
Let's go to 3 different examples. Does the platform change based on the services that are rendered for a burgeoning agency owner?
Yeah. So, okay, I guess we'll start with thumbnail person first. So thumbnail person, the first hire I would recommend is probably one person to take on the fulfillment. That worked out really well for me. And then the second one would be the executive assistant to take on a lot of the I hate admin work. I just can't do it. I'm like 6% detail oriented. I just can't. So there's that. So one person to take on fulfillment, the other person like an EA to take on the admin tasks. And then what worked for us is we brought on an operations person because we had so many contractors. And then the operations person once we brought on that person, his name's Daniel, everything took off. Like, because he was really good at recruiting people too. And we would just vibe on everything and he just understood. He was kind of the, people talk about the visionary integrator.
Yeah.
He was the integrator.
How did you meet him?
Job posting. Got lucky.
No.
Yeah, got lucky.
And did you use the word integrator? Because I'm creating a podcast episode on what kind of words you should be using. And so obviously if you use integrator, you're very familiar with Gino Wickman, but is that like a subculture?
No, he didn't even know what it was. But yeah, he took a shot and, thanks to him, it worked out.
Wow. And how long are you guys working together?
Well, he's not here anymore, but he'll text me every now and then, like with other ex-grainers and like, oh my God, like, and I apologize. I was like, I'm sorry, I like wasn't involved. He's like, dude, you were the only CEO we needed, right? I was like, oh, that's nice to hear, right?
You know what? I couldn't think of a better way to round out this podcast. Through the ups and the downs and starting and being extraordinarily gritty. And what you're proposing to people is not is nothing that you have not done yourself.
Yeah.
And so to have a former grainer come to you and say you were the CEO that we needed at that time is a really beautiful testament to who you are. And 5 years from now, when you have really transformed the agency industry, but specifically your own agency, I think there's gonna be people who say the same thing. You were the CEO that we needed then, and you're the CEO that we need now. For people who want to know more about you, learn more about you, perhaps join that agency mastermind that you and Neil are hosting. Like, where do people go and get the goods?
Well, thank you for that. Well, one final thing I'll say, I think it's both my elementary school friend and I, like, we grew up together. We're just like, we were really anxious, right? And now as we're, in our late 30s, we're just like, all you got to do to make it all work is just surf the wave. You try to control it, you sink, right? As long as you're just surfing the wave, taking the ups and downs, like, you will build a big business. I think people just get too anxious and they give up too quickly, they tap out too quickly. So that's the final thing I would say. But if you want to learn more about the Agency Owners Association, just go to marketingschool.io/agency. And
we'll link it in the show notes.
You can find me on all socials at Eric OSIU. So Instagram, Twitter, and all the things. But yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching and listening to the Jasmine Star Show. My goal is to talk about the business of the business, to give you an inside look about things that we often don't talk about, and to see if there's resonance with you, or perhaps investing in some of the guests that you see here today. For more information, you could definitely check out Eric, and be sure to tag us both on Instagram if you found this episode helpful or compelling. Again, thank you for watching and listening to the Jasmine Star Show.